There's never going to be a good time for a massive polar blast to make its way across North America, but the timing of this once-in-a-generation storm could frankly not be worse, right as millions of people are getting ready to travel for the holidays. The icy storm is disrupting transportation, causing power outages, and putting huge pressure on homeless shelters. Over half of the United States is estimated to be under a weather warning, with a huge storm stretching from coast to coast.
Bitter blizzards and severe snow do not bode well for cross-country Christmas travel. And as America endures a once-in-a-generation storm, some are struggling to find the festive spirit.
We don't know what's going to happen, whether or not they have extra flights for tonight, or they're saying maybe they won't even have flights tomorrow. So it's Christmas, it sucks.
The weather outside truly is frightful, and it's creating travel chaos for the millions of people headed home for the holidays. More than 3,000 flights have been cancelled. Many are stranded at airports during what is one of the busiest travel times of the year.
Tried like dozens and dozens of different airports. I called the airline and they tried, but there's like no availability until after Christmas.
The severe cold isn't only a problem for air travel. Driving is extremely treacherous, with roads blanketed in snow and ice. The weather has left more than 1 million homes without power, but conditions are especially dire for those who don't have any shelter.
With the cold, one of the things that can be dangerous is people can be laying on the sidewalk or sleeping outside, and you don't always realize just how dire of a situation that you're in. It can be really easy for people to kind of doze off and fall asleep and unfortunately end up losing their lives because of the cold weather.
More than 200 million Americans are under extreme weather advisories. The National Weather Service says it's one of the largest warnings ever. These satellite images revealing what Santa could be up against in time for the big day. Forecasters are warning that parts of the country could be on track for their coldest Christmas on record.
For more, let's bring in DW correspondent Sumi Somaskanda in Washington. Sumi, it looks comparatively calm where you are. What's the situation in the country right now?
It's not as calm in the rest of the country, Nicole. Just to bring you some numbers, more than 1.5 million homes and businesses don't have any power right now, and more than 200 million people, which is about 2/3 of the U.S. population, they are under some form of severe winter warning or advisory. And here in D.C., the worst is yet to come. Along the East Coast, the temperatures are going to drop further tomorrow. This is a storm that is really stretched from coast to coast. We are seeing frigid temperatures and conditions in Seattle all the way down to Florida, which is actually going to see some really unusually cold temperatures this weekend as well. This really is just a massive storm. And I'm from upstate New York. I lived in Chicago. These are places that are used to really cold weather, tons of snow, blizzards. But what makes this storm different is this bomb cyclone effect that meteorologists here have talked about. That is when atmospheric pressure drops so quickly in a strong storm. And to give you an idea, the city of Denver saw temperatures drop 47 degrees in 2 hours, 47 degrees. So we're talking about plunges we don't usually see. And the other aspect there is the wind. So there is this incredible wind chill. Wind has been whipping up snow. It's created whiteout conditions on roads. So as we heard, this really is a once-in-a-generation storm.
In the report, we heard a woman concerned about the fate of homeless people. How are people coping with this, as you say, once-in-a-generation storm?
Yeah, this really is the biggest concern for many people. The elderly and the homeless, so those who don't have shelter. Authorities in a lot of cities have been scrambling. They've opened up warming centers and short-term emergency shelters to help residents stay out of the cold, particularly the homeless. And I should say, Nicole, that I was just in El Paso on the border in Texas, where thousands of migrants have been entering there. And Texas is seeing unusually cold temperatures. We were there earlier this week, and people were sleeping on the streets. They were wrapping up in blankets. But it's getting too cold to do even that. So the city has set up some buses where people can go inside and warm up. And they've also opened up the convention center so people don't have to sleep on the streets anymore. But the other big concern, of course, is travel. We heard in the report it is just before Christmas. You usually have millions of people on the road or in the air heading to their loved ones. And as of now, today, only more than 9,000 flights have been canceled. And even though people have been told to stay home and stay put, some people are also taking to the roads. We've seen reports reports of crashes and people getting stuck on highways.
Previous storms have had devastating effects on the infrastructure, with millions of people left for days on end without power. Are authorities better prepared this time around?
Well, authorities in many cities say they are better prepared. We know that Texas in 2021 had that massive storm that hit the power grid really hard, and authorities there say they are better prepared to make sure that electricity is still available through the storm. Here in Washington, President Biden addressed the storm and said he wants everyone to stay home, and that the White House has contacted 26 governors to offer aid and all sorts of supplies and help. And governors across the country have called up the National Guard to help deal with accidents on the road, to get supplies to people who need help. They have crews working around the clock to ensure that roads can be somewhat cleared, especially for emergency vehicles to pass. So authorities seem to have been preparing all week and getting ready for this. But again, Nicole, these are temperatures, and this is a type of storm that is just unprecedented.
DW, Sumisa Maskanda in Washington, thank you so much for that update. Now over to Brian Kahn, who's a science writer. He covers climate change and how society is responding to it. Mr. Kahn, welcome to DW. This is being called a once-in-a-generation storm. Is this an anomaly or part of a larger pattern that we will have to get used to?
I mean, this storm is a little bit of both. I mean, it certainly is an anomaly in the sense that we are going to see records fall that have been standing for decades, if not longer than that. So, and in some sense, this is a really unique event that people should take seriously. Whether this is part of a larger pattern tied to climate change, I think is an area of very, what researchers call active research. And so we're still trying to tease that out, but there are some signs and ways that climate change is influencing this type of cold weather outbreak, which may sound a little bit backwards, but that is a case and something that scientists are still really working on.
Could there be more such storms in coming years then?
I mean, there could be. So one of the concerns that scientists have is that because the Arctic is warming faster than the rest of the world, that sort of creates this sort of imbalance where essentially cold air that's in the Arctic can dip down into the mid-latitudes, like places like the US, Europe, places where people live, with more frequency. Now that is a very, it's something that we've seen repeatedly over the past decade or so. So it's something that there's certainly evidence of that. Whether there's a direct link is something that people are still working on. But I think that, it's really important to realize that even with the world warming, we are still going to see these cold air outbreaks, and that doesn't make them any less dangerous.
How can we, in our societies, with our infrastructure, how can we adapt to storms like these?
Well, I think it's a question of, you mentioned the Texas grid in the previous segment. I mean, there's just the reality that we saw when you don't have infrastructure repaired, when it's not winterized, that's when it goes down. When demand spikes, that's when you have these problems. And so I think that, we have to sort of work on both sides of the coin, be prepared for the fact that there's going to be incredible strain on the electric grid when it's really hot out, which we'll see lots more of in the summer. So we need to start to prepare for that, while also realizing that with these cold weather outbreaks, keeping up on winterization, having redundancy, backup power, making sure that people have the resources they need, maybe even installing batteries at home. Those are the kinds of things that we really need to be thinking about. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach to make sure that we don't have bad things happen.
Climate editor Brian Kahn, thank you so much.
Thank you.